Hello and welcome. Welcome to another live broadcast. So, for those of you who are new to seeing my face, my name is Zaakirah. I am a retinoblastoma cancer survivor. And I've also written a book called Seeing Life Through a Different Lens, where my mother and I talk about what it's been like to survive retinoblastoma for almost 30 years. And to continue the awareness of the rare childhood eye cancer, I also have the honor of talking to Miss Marissa Gonzalez. She is the president of World Eye Cancer Hope, also known as We See Hope. It's a nonprofit that's committed to bringing the promise of life and sight to every child with any rare childhood eye cancer, even especially retinoblastoma. So Marissa loves event planning. So we will also talk about one of the events that she recently just finished called One RB World. And One RB World is also known as One Retinoblastoma World. And since 2017, the mission is to ensure that every caregiver has access to the appropriate knowledge, skills, resources, and collaborative efforts to enable high quality, evidence based care for children, survivors, and their family members. So it brought together eye and cancer specialists, all the doctors that us cancer survivors need to keep ourselves alive and well, the researchers, the parents, and survivor advocates from all over the world. We See Hope also has chapters in Kenya, in Canada, and in the United Kingdom. So we're going to talk about that, and we have a link in the description, and we'll also put it on the screen for you to learn more about the nonprofit. But without further ado, hello, Marissa. How are you?
Hello, my dear. I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So, how are you today? I mean, you're off the high of a conference. I know how that feels. That's always fun and then tiring, and then so how are you feeling?
I definitely took a 2 hour nap today. I'm so relieved that the conference is over, but it went so well. We had 160 people registered from 28 different countries on 6 continents, and we had presenters. In one panel we had a presenter from Scotland, India, Vietnam, and Australia. I mean, it was just really a very global collaboration, and it was very successful. So I'm feeling very happy but still very tired.
I understand that. I love that. And thank you also. We've been in touch. You reached out to me before I had been on a road trip, so I was like busy, but you reached out to me before for because you had a survivors panel. And so another one of the survivors that I recently talked to, Cleona, she was like, I see you in this conference. So tell us more about that. What was the survivor aspect that you incorporated this year? Because I know, let me rewind a little bit. Most of your conferences have been in person, but since the
Yes.
pandemic, you had to switch to virtual. We were almost so close to going to the lovely waters of Hawaii, but then you switched to virtual. So, with that being said, how were you able to pivot the survivors panel for this year?
Yes, we were very much. I love Cleonia. I'm so glad you gave her a shout out. She's just an amazing, amazing human being. And we were all really excited to be heading to the beaches of Hawaii, but just with the pandemic, and we based the dates of One Retinoblastoma World around the SIOP conference, which is the International Society of Pediatric Oncology, because so many of the medical professionals who attend One RB World are also attending the SIOP conference. So when they decided to go virtual back in the spring, we also decided to go ahead and be virtual. And last year we had the conference in Ottawa, and it went virtual. So our World Eye Cancer Hope team in Canada just did a tremendous job of being kind of the guinea pigs for the Zoom event, and so we really piggybacked off of a lot of the things that they did last year. And there are pros to having it be virtual, because we were able to have attendance from or registrations from 28 countries. And the cost of traveling to Hawaii is can be prohibitive depending on where you're at. So with that said, we focused Friday. It was a 3-day conference, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we focused Friday on survivorship. So we opened. We had a keynote speech each of the 3 days, and we also partnered with retinoblastoma supporters in Australia, and Sandra Staffieri from the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne took the lead on the scientific programming. So we being that we were going to be in Hawaii, really wanted to focus on countries in the Pacific Rim and that geographic region. So it was just a natural fit that we had a lot of representation from Australia, which was very, very neat, and had some great stories. So we had Cheryl Newman she's a survivor from Australia. She gave our keynote. And then we had our survivor panel, and we had Genevieve Savoy from Toronto. We had Kieran Donovan from Edinburgh, Scotland. And we also had Cheryl Newman, who had given the keynote from Australia. And so we talked about, they had the opportunity to share their different stories and talk about the struggles, talk about the ups and downs. One was a unilateral survivor and 2 were bilateral survivors. They had various levels of vision. One had both eyes enucleated as a child, and one had unilateral, had the eye removed, and then was cancer free. So it was very, this journey, as you know, is not the same for anyone. Every retinoblastoma case is very different. And so it was really neat to hear the perspectives of the 3 different people, also from different parts of the world. And then following in the survivorship theme, we had a session about survivorship care and survivorship clinics. And I live in the Los Angeles area, and through the USC Norris Comprehensive Cancer Center, they have a wonderful survivorship program and a team that follows adults with various different cancers that are survivors, but they also follow retinoblastoma. So we had 2 of the specialists from there come on and talk about what you need to be looking for as a survivor, what you need to be asking your doctors for, what type of second cancer risks there are, and how to, kind of walk that line of, oh my gosh, I think I have a mosquito bite, I need to go to the doctor, versus, having a very educated look at what your possible second cancer risks are. And then we had a great session from Hilary Ratcher up at Sick Kids in Toronto about genetics. So more understanding what is a genetic mutation, what, she went through the science of how an actual genetic mutation happens, which was a little over my head, but was super interesting. And, what you need to look for when you do have an RB1 mutation, which is the retinoblastoma mutation. And then we had a session called All About Prosthetic Eyes. So we had 2 great presentations, one from Matthew Milne in Toronto about, what is a prosthetic eye? How once a child has an eye removed, what are the steps that they go through? And this was really geared towards newer parents and caregivers of more newly diagnosed children, to kind of give them an overview of, oh my gosh, my child's eye has just been removed. What on earth? Your world is just turned upside down. So like a very layman's terms discussion of how they do a fitting, or how they, will work with the different kinds of implants that the child might have, and how often a child needs to get their prosthetic eye cleaned. And, as they grow, how often they'll need new ones. And then Cami Lawyer from Melbourne, Australia, who's also an ocularist, talked about how she uses pets. She has therapy dogs in her office, and she has the children come in and not even touch their eyes, not even look in their eyes, but just initially meeting them and playing with the pets and, getting to know them, so that the next time they come in, they're more familiar with her, which I don't know about you, but I still have trauma from, having my eye work done as a child, and hated going, to visit the ocularist. But I think
But that's interesting though. She would not go straight to the appointment, just, hey, how are you? I love
yeah.
you. Okay.
So they would come into the office, see the office, and see the pets, and really incorporate some child life. activities so that they could get kind of comfortable in the office, and then they would leave. And then their next appointment, they already had a foundation of, okay, this woman was nice to me last time, and I really liked her dog is named Zazu after the Lion King. So, oh, I get to go see Zazu again. And, there's already then that kind of level of trust with her. So hopefully the goal is to have it a little bit easier for, the children and the parents, because it can be such a traumatic experience.
I think that's important, but not just also, like you said, for us, like we're so used to dreading the appointment because it's like hour long, more than hour long wait anyway. And then we get to the doctor, then it's like, okay, you're good to go. Okay, please look out for this, and then bye. So that's a good perspective, not just for us as survivors, but any doctor. I think there's a new generation of doctors. I'm glad you're mentioning it because I believe there's a new generation of doctors that have more empathy. It's not just about the money, not just about the medical research. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And you know what? You're so insightful. You're so informative, and I'm like, I'm learning a lot. Just as if I was there. But how about we rewind a little bit? Now let's talk about you. How are you so knowledgeable about this? How do you know so much about this? What's your story?
So it's been a long journey, as I know you have as well, because I've read the book and very much
Oh, thank
enjoyed
you.
it. So I'm 41, and I was diagnosed in 1982 at 17 months of age, and diagnosed with bilateral retinoblastoma. And I received radiation and cryotherapy. And then at 23 months of age, the doctors determined that the left eye needed to be removed. So just before my second birthday, the left eye was removed. And then the right eye continued to have tumor growth for an additional 5 years. So we were in surgery every couple months, treating with cryotherapy. And then it was an additional 5 years before they could actually declare the cancer gone. So in that 10-year period, I wasn't able, once the last tumor growth stopped and they were still doing surgeries, we weren't able to do office visits, which is something that's very different now. A lot of the children progress to office visits at young ages, like 5, 6, 7, which is so amazing because I was still doing surgeries until I was 12. So by the time I was 12, I'd had 50 surgeries between Long Beach Memorial Hospital in Southern California and Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. And then as I grew with radiation, you get a lot of radiation damage, especially when it is administered as a baby, because the bones in the area, the muscles, the tissues stop growing. So as my head grew, my temples stayed very indented. So by the time I was, a teenager and almost fully grown, my head looked deformed and it looked very different. And the eyelid over the prosthetic eye looked, different. And I mean, kids can be cruel, and they make fun of, kids will find any reason to make fun of other kids, not for something like this, but when it's something that you can't change and you don't have a choice, it can be really, really difficult. And which is another reason that child life and just the talking about the open dialogue that a lot more families have now with their young children, I think is important, because it does allow children to fight back with words like, well, let me explain to you, like, let me tell you what happened, as opposed to, hitting or fighting or anything. So with the radiation also came the growth of a cataract. So by the time I was a junior in college, I had to have it removed, which was very scary because I was going blind from the cataract in the only eye that I had. And that was just one of the scariest moments, especially that I was at the rival university hospital. I'm a USC Trojan, and I had to have it at UCLA. So I was like, no, I don't want to go to UCLA. But they did a tremendous job. But as a teenager, I didn't talk about retinoblastoma. I didn't talk about cancer. That was the furthest thing from like my normal vocabulary. And probably in my mid 20s, I started to think, okay, I have this disease. I can't do anything about it. I personally don't spend time on asking, like, why did this happen to me? Because it happened to me and there's nothing I can do about it. So in my mid 20s, I started to think, okay, well, I can't do anything about the fact that I had it, but I can do something with other families or other survivors or other patients. And so I just very lightly, oh no, my battery, hang on. Very lightly started to step into finding out more about different groups out there on Facebook. I found World Eye Cancer Hope. I started to get connected. And then over the years, just found, I met my first survivor. She was in town with her family and staying at the Disneyland Hotel. And so I was like, okay, well, she's normal. She's married. She has kids, and just kind of started to get into the RB world, and then became just more passionate and learned a lot more, and joined the board when we formed the United States chapter in, gosh, I think 2012, 2013. I was asked to be on the board, and then went to the One RB World Conference in 2016 in Ireland, knowing it was going to be here in the United States in Washington, D.C. in 2017, and that I had agreed to be the event chair, along with Dr. Jessie Berry from Children's Los Angeles, who was going to be the scientific program chair. So together we were going to be planning it. So we both went to the Dublin conference to just, learn more about it. And then last year was in Ottawa, and it was virtual. And then here we were again. So just kind of step by step, baby steps into learning about the world of survivorship. And I've become very passionate about it, and advocacy and awareness, not only here in the United States, but also on the international level.
I love that. Now, where is it going to be next year?
So next year it's going to be in Barcelona, Spain, and we're just in initial talks with some of the groups in Spain, and I think it's going to be a more truncated, like maybe only one day of programming, and it's going to be virtual. We think. We haven't. And the team out in Barcelona will be taking that on, which will be a nice little break. And then 2023, it will be back in Ottawa. So our Canada team will be taking that on. And then in 2024, it'll be back in Hawaii, because the SIAP, the conference that we kind of partner with, they had so many deposits on hotels and convention centers and everything that they're going back to Ottawa and back to Hawaii so that they don't lose all of that money because of COVID. Okay. So I'm not complaining, because, in 3 years we'll be back in Hawaii. So we can have some Mai Tais on the beach.
So this is still great, though, that you still get to do what you love to do, because you love event planning. And so you get to have fun telling your story, inspiring others, doing event planning. And so how did you really come to that aha moment? Because I think that's still important, regardless of, no matter what you go through, that you have a purpose here on this earth. And so how did you come to that conclusion?
I think my mom raised me as a single parent, and my grandma was also very involved. And we didn't talk about it. She did not talk about it at all. It was almost like the elephant in the room. Just, okay, the only reason I knew I was having surgery is because we would go to the pre-op appointment. And then I knew, okay, that means tomorrow I'm in the hospital. And I would remember she would put the dilation drops in my eye before we left for the hospital, so we would still be at home, so that by the time I got to the hospital, my eye was dilated. And I just remember just clenching my eyes, closed in the back seat, and I knew, like, every single turn of the car to the hospital, it's about a 15-20 minute drive, and I just knew, like, once we turned on this street, and we were here for a long time, we were getting closer, and just dread in my gut as, a 5 and 6 year old. And then it was like, we're here, and then you're, hooked up with IVs, and then you get the gas mask, and there was no dialogue. There was no conversation. How are you feeling? Tomorrow's surgery day. And I think that there was a lot of emotional growth that was very stunted, because there was no dialogue. And I have, very much expressed that to her as an adult, and we've worked through that as well. But because it was kind of so taboo and such, just like something we didn't talk about, I think that by the time I hit my mid to late 20s, I was just emotionally kind of ready to talk about it and ready to meet other people in a similar situation, because as you know, there aren't a ton of us. And you know, we also, growing up when I was a teenager, we didn't have Facebook, and like the internet was just getting started. I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 16. So there weren't those opportunities to connect. But I think just not really, I felt like I wasn't, quote, allowed to talk about it. And I think that played a big role into, once I was finally ready, like, okay, I'm an adult now. Like, it's up to me if I want to talk about it. It's up to me if I want to try to kind of heal some of those wounds.
Yeah, that's very important. I'm glad that you did come to that full circle moment of I'm ready to talk about it. I'm ready to help others, and I know what I like to do, and I'm gonna do it. So thank you also for doing that, because I feel like also there's so many of us that are still stuck
Mm-hmm.
on why me, why me, and I can't do this, I can't do that. When literally, like you said, we create our lives. We were blessed to still have a few more of our senses. We have a few of our five senses left, so we can use them to our best advantage, especially with technology nowadays. So
Mm-hmm. My phone talks to me. I actually had a reconstructive surgery 3 years ago, and I had an optic nerve stroke during surgery in my seeing eye, and so 3 years ago became legally blind. I had vision that was 20/30 in the seeing eye, and so the last 3 years have been kind of a real whirlwind of just all of a sudden going from vision to very, very little vision, which has been, just as you can imagine, one of the most difficult things to ever have to
emotional,
go through.
yeah.
But technology, I mean, my phone talks to me, my phone, everything, my computer yells at me. I ask Alexa 17 times a day what time it is, what's the weather. You know, Alexa and I have become best friends.
Right. I love that. Yeah, I've always been like tech savvy, and of course, the older I get, the more it works out. Because at least luckily I was born, and I feel like luckily in a gentle way that the hearing or the vision could decline at any point in
Hmm.
time. And so luckily I'm tech savvy as well. Of like, I know I'm fully aware of all the changes in iPhones and Apple computers and for me hearing aids and like you said, Alexas and Googles and all those technology apps that really can make it so much easier for anyone to still do what it is that they fully enjoy. Even
Hmm.
even for me, I think for me, when I started out as a photographer, I started off with intuition, that intuition-based photography. But even
Hmm.
now, when I'm like a photography coach, a lot of people are talking to me about, well, I have this camera, I can just see right in the back of it, or I don't even have to, my camera can talk to me, or I can automatically connect it to Wi-Fi. And I'm like, yeah, technology is improving. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so much fun. Okay, so speaking of technology and resources and education, give us a few resources where um, those who are, this is such an insightful conversation for them, they have no idea about all the things you shared. Where can they go to find out more?
Absolutely. On the retinoblastoma front, World Eye Cancer Hope, it's WE, the letter C, Hope, HOPE.org. So we see hope.org for resources for retinoblastoma. We have a map of different centers around the world, not only in the United States, but around the world. We have lists of ocularists around the world. So if someone needs to find someone who makes the prosthetic eyes, we have those types of resources. We have blogs every 2 weeks. Abby White, our COO, who I'm sure you know, she publishes new blogs. Also, World Eye Cancer Hope on Facebook, and we don't have a huge Twitter presence, but some other resources that I've learned a lot more about in the adaptive technology world just in the last 3 years that I found really, really helpful. So I'm in Southern California, and the Braille Institute has about 5 or 6 chapters in Southern California. So I started going there, and the Braille Institute has free trainings. Everything, not everything, but one-on-one training is free for adaptive technology, which is amazing because it's not free everywhere. But they, regionally there are different centers like the Braille Institute. I've also been going to in-person and over Zoom classes at the Lighthouse Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. There are different Lighthouse centers around the country, but I was going to one in San Francisco, and they have a great access technology team. And through the Department of Rehabilitation here in the state of California, they've been able to help get classes paid for, one-on-one tutoring over Zoom with one of their access tech team members who can get onto my computer, can help teach me things on the phone, on the computer. They can just go over and over and over again, like how to buy something on Amazon, how to practice makes perfect. And so those have been really incredible resources for visually impaired, which I felt like I didn't even have any idea. I knew that they existed, but I didn't have any idea the depth of services that they offered until I became legally blind. And I don't know how many people out there know about them. And I could have been using them as a monocular vision person, but I've really found both the Lighthouse and the Braille Institute have been amazing. I need to grab my charger, and I'm so sorry. I will be right back. My battery's about to die.
And while she's doing that, I want to also recommend a website called Know the Glow, KNO the Glow. And so, although we are two retinoblastoma cancer survivors, Marissa is an amazing event planner. I'm also an author of a memoir that my mom and I wrote together. Retinoblastoma is not the only childhood eye cancer. So basically, if you were to continue to research and continue to learn more about childhood eye cancers, be sure to visit knowtheglow.org. And also to kind of bounce off of what you were talking about, there's lots of resources out there in the instance that you want to either learn what it's like to kind of walk a mile in a visually impaired or blind person's shoes, and connect with the lighthouses, to connect with the lighthouses. And I'll actually link it. My brain is going a million miles a minute. I'm gonna link it in the description and put more links. And also in regard to their blog, I got to be a special a special guest poster. They featured, we have an amazing Facebook group of other survivors and family members. So We See Hope actually has a Facebook group. She didn't mention that, but they have a Facebook group with other survivors and friends of and family members of. And through there, there's kind of like a small conversation where other survivors got to talk about what it's been like to survive. So definitely check out We See Hope, and also Know the Glow. And if you want to learn more about retinoblastoma, I've had the pleasure of talking to another survivor who is actually a YouTuber. She's a YouTube blogger, and she's based in London. Her name is Abby. And I will link that as well because we had a wonderful conversation of her experience as well. And I have another podcast episode. So we'll definitely make sure that you have as much information at your fingertips to learn more. So, Marissa, I started to talk about Know the Glow. And
oh my gosh, yes. And you know what? I cannot find my charger.
Oh.
I literally thought this thing was charged from the conference. So I can either jump on my phone, or we can, once it dies, do another session. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but that's fine. Luckily, we're coming to the end of the session anyways.
Abby, I heard you mention Abby White. She's amazing. And Know the Glow, Megan Weber, who also is here in the Los Angeles area. Are you in the DC area still, Zaakirah?
No, I have family there, so I travel there often.
Because you went there for your photography school, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So right now it's a little bit of everything. So it's Nashville, Tennessee, there's Dallas, Texas, there's Atlanta, Georgia. So I have family everywhere. So even if I live in Dallas now, like I travel back to the East Coast and whatnot often.
Gotcha. So Megan is here in the Los Angeles area, and she founded Know the Glow. And she and Cindy Kelly Mays, one of their board members, actually gave a great talk on Sunday of the conference called Global Glow, and they discussed, the white glow of leukocoria can also be a sign for other things such as Coates disease, which is what her son Ben has. And so initially they thought he had, retinoblastoma, and so because of that, that's how she got into her activism. And she had I'm not sure if you know this parent from India. His name is Larry Wag, and his daughter Abigail. He's very vocal on social media, and he's just a sweetheart. His daughter Abigail has RB, and they're in Mumbai. And then Andrew Blakely was on her panel as well, who's developed. It's called the ArcLight scope, and it's a very inexpensive. It's not a direct ophthalmoscope, which is what the doctors use to look for the red reflux in the eye, but it's a version of that can detect the glow, and it's, I think, about $15 US, and they've been sending a lot of those to developing nations and a lot of countries in Africa, and they've really been able to detect retinoblastoma in communities where it would not even go detected.
I love that technology once again. Wonderful. Well, I don't want to cut off when you're saying something super insightful. So what we'll do, we'll definitely end it here, and I feel like this is definitely the beginning of a beautiful relationship. And thank you,
Yes.
Marissa, for being here because the conversation never ending.
Thank you. I know it's great to actually be with you here in person. And
Yes.
thank you so much for all of the awareness and activism that you are doing. And it's just the beginning of lots more working together. And thank you for having me and for shining a light on One Retinoblastoma World.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so everyone else, be sure to share this video if you found it insightful. Be sure to look at the information in the description to find out more resources. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.